I'd like to call the special City Council meeting of Tuesday, March 29th, 2022 to order. If I can have our City Clerk please call the roll.
Mayor Flores.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Tharp.
Present.
Councilmember Noble.
Here.
Councilmember Dugo.
Here.
Councilmember Diaz.
Here.
Councilmember Bousquet.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a short agenda today. Do I have a motion to approve that agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, I have a motion made by, I think it was Councilmember Bousquet, second by Deputy Mayor Tharp. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries 5-0. All right, at this time, I'd like to invite anybody from the public for comments. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. This would be on agenda items only. Once again, comments from the public on agenda items only. Seeing none, moving on to regular agenda. Today we have one item we'll be discussing. We have the Green Acres redistricting alternatives. Today we have Stephen Barusa. Did I spell that right? Professor and Chair of the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at FAU, and we also have James Gamek Clark, Senior Instructor, Department of Geoscience at FAU. So thank you and welcome. Before we start the presentation, I'd like to open it up to the council, see if they have any specific questions prior to, so that as you're going through, maybe you can answer those questions through your presentation. So are there any questions from the council based on the items that were given to us? Deputy Mayor Tharp.
The only question, when you go through it, as it relates to the existing districts, if a council member would have moved districts, would be the only thing I'd like to make sure that we cover and discuss.
Certainly. Would you like to address it now, or as part of?
As we go through the presentation, I think it's probably.
That's fine. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? My only question might be directed to our staff is, when was the last time we went through this process? If you can just remind me, Andrea. I know it's obviously pertains me.
You know, interestingly, we went back through, and I think the city clerk and I looked. I don't know that we could actually find a document that actually showed that we went through the process, that there was an engagement, but I couldn't actually find a document.
And our charter, does it, we'll go back to you, Councilmember Noble, in a second. In the charter, does it dictate how this process works?
No, I don't believe the charter speaks to redistricting in any way, no.
Okay. Councilmember Noble.
I've been on the city council for 24 years. After my first year on the council, we had this redistricting to the point that I was redistricted out and I had to run again for my district. So this is the advantage of having an 87-year-old city councilman to give you the background of what's going on in the city.
Well said.
So that would be what, 2000?
Probably.
The 2000 census?
Yes.
So
We can see, Mayor, we can see what we can find going back that far.
Thank you. I guess, I think I would like to see if we reconvene a charter committee, that we put a proper process in place for this to happen, you know, at least be looked at every 10 years with the census information. Some of the data that I saw here was extremely skewed. I think we're out of sort of compliance by that 10%, right? That threshold?
Significantly so.
Significantly, right? So that to me is a concern, something that hopefully we can build into the system so that we don't have that happen again.
Mayor, if I can, there are some municipalities that do have that as part of their charter, that just as a part of the census process, that you go through that process every 10 years as part of the census. Some municipalities do have that within their charters.
Excellent.
Mayor,
Councilmember Bousquet.
over the years, I've brought up a concern It was with District 1, and specifically Nautica Isles. There were two districts, it was split into two districts. And because of that, half the city council technically could be from Nautica Isles, the mayor and two council people. So that was a concern of mine, and in presentation, or in, I guess it's presentation, 2, 3, and 4, River Bridge is split in half. So we fixed the problem with Nautica Isles, and those 3 split River Bridge in half, which the same concern is that there could be two council people and a mayor from one subdivision, which is concerning.
Thank you.
That's just my comment.
Thank you. Anyone else before we turn it over to the professionals?
If you did want to do it...
I don't think your mic is on.
Sorry. If you did want to have it every 10 years, you could do the charter, of course, but you could also just do an ordinance or a resolution. It would be a little easier to just adopt an ordinance that requires that every 10 years the city undertakes this redistricting.
Okay. That's a different way. Okay. Like that. Any other questions or comments from the council?
I did have some concerns.
Councilmember Diaz.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out I just want to know what happens. Several of the maps do take a sitting council member out of their district, so, and specifically 2, 3, and 4, and I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. All right, so we'll hand it over to the professionals now. Once again, thank you for being here, and I think you've heard a little bit of the concerns of the council.
Thank you. Before I start, allow me, if I may, to address Councilwoman Diaz's concern. Obviously, this process has been going on for a long time. When we created those alternatives, we took great care, or at least we took into consideration the addresses of the sitting council members. Obviously, you've had an election recently, and that situation may have changed. Thank you very much. My name is James Gamma-Clark. It's a great pleasure to be here, great honor for you to invite us to do this analysis for you. Again, I'm here this evening with Dr. Barraza to present your redistricting alternatives. Allow me to go very briefly through our agenda for the evening. I will introduce the redistricting team. We'll talk about the data that we use as part of this analysis. We'll talk about the redistricting parameters that were used, and that might address another one of the questions that was brought up. We'll then talk about your existing districts and future growth. We'll then get to the meat of this evening's presentation, which is to discuss the map alternatives. But again, given how long this process has taken since we first started, you may find that some of those map alternatives are no longer appropriate. And of course, if you eliminate some, then that greatly simplifies the process. And then we'll finish up with a brief summary. So you've already met Dr. Barraza, Chair of the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. In addition to myself, we have 2 other team members who aren't here with us this evening. We have Dr. Schultz, who like me is from the Department of Geosciences, and we also have Michael Stam, who's also from the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. The data that we use for our analysis is the same data set that is being used all over the country for redistricting, whether you're doing it at the municipal level or at the congressional district level. And that is specifically the U.S. Census Bureau's 2020 Census Redistricting Summary File. So this is a data set that was created specifically for this purpose. The only difference is, of course, is that when you're doing it at the municipal level, you have to use the smallest enumeration unit possible, which is the census block. Whereas if you're doing this at the congressional district level, for example, you might use a census tract. But it all comes from the same data set. So these small census blocks which we use, which are necessary at the municipal level to get the spatial resolution you need to carve up equal districts, these are all aggregated together to form each of the 5 voting districts in the alternatives that will be presented to you this evening. The second set of data that we used in tonight's analysis is housing data that was provided to us by your city staff. And specifically, this allowed us to conduct a population estimate out to 2023. So this took into consideration construction that was started or expected to be completed after Census Day of 2020, which is April 1st, through to January of 2023. And of course, the reason we do this is that you don't want to go to all the expense and effort of going through a redistricting process, only to find that your districts are out of alignment at the end of that process because you fail to account for this oncoming growth. So the parameters that we use in our analysis are as follows. The first is reasonable population equality across districts. We certainly seek to make sure that a maximum 10% overall deviation from the ideal size, that is the population of the city divided by the 5 districts, is not exceeded. Our second consideration is geographic contiguity and appropriate compactness. So we'll try to make sure that there aren't any off parcels that aren't adjacent to the rest of your district boundaries. And we'll certainly try to follow major natural and man-made boundaries where possible. And then we'll seek to respect the integrity of communities of interest and neighborhoods where possible. That said, population equality is our primary concern, and the others are significant in guiding our decisions towards reasonable population balance. This means that we try not to break up neighborhoods between different districts, but that's not always possible. Okay, the overarching goal is to make sure that the residents of the city of Green Acres have equal representation under the council. And so if we need to achieve population equality by breaking up a community, then that's something that we would take into consideration. Again, we try not to, but that's not always possible. On the screen you see a map that I'm sure you're all very familiar with. These are your existing district boundaries, and as Councilman Noble was suggesting, they've been in effect for at least 21 years. And of course, it's on these district boundaries that we've performed our analysis. So if we look at these districts, and in particular look at the 2020 data, we see that the city of Green Acres population was 43,990. Dividing that by 5 gives us an average of 8,798 for each district. If we project out to the 2023 planning horizon, using the data that was provided to us by city staff, we see that the population of Green Acres is expected to grow to 44,999. Dividing by 5 gives us an average, a future average, ideal population for your districts of 9,000. So that's the number that we're working towards. We're trying to get each of your districts as close to 5,000 as we possibly can. So what we find is that your current council districts are heavily unbalanced. They have a total deviation of 66.22%. If we divide that by 5, that gives us a mean deviation of 13.24%. Also, if you look at the two top rows in the table here indicated by the flashing arrows, we see that your largest district has a deviation of 34.99%, and your smallest has a deviation of negative 21.86%. If we add those two together, we get a statistic called the spread. That is the difference between the biggest and smallest district. And so we see that spread is 56.85%. So both of these values, your spread and your mean deviation, exceed our maximum 10% threshold. So this suggests that redistricting is required. And this is where the alternatives come in that we prepared for you back in January. So 5 alternatives were created, all meet standard districting guidelines. They represent alternative ways to better balance district populations. They keep with the intent of the other identified guidelines that we mentioned previously. The overall pattern of district boundary change that's needed is to reduce the population of District 1 and to expand that of District 2. And again, if you go back to that previous slide, you saw those 2 red arrows highlighting those districts as being heavily out of balance. This, of course, necessitates an adjustment of the geographic boundaries where District 1 must contract in size, while District 2 must add territory. We also sought to improve spatial compactness and contiguity. There were 2 areas identified of particular concern, one in the north and one in the south, and we'll discuss these as we go along through our alternatives. So, given the shape of the city, it is necessary to define the districts found at the northern and southern ends first, and then work towards the middle of the city. It is here where there is greater flexibility in the district's potential boundaries. Obviously, at the northern and southern peninsulas, if you like, appendages, you've got fixed boundaries, and there's not a lot of playing around we can do there. So this is the case in all of the alternatives that we present this evening. They effectively break down into permutations of what is done with the districts that's in the northern half of the city and the southern half of the city. And in all 5 of the alternatives, we use 10th Avenue North as the demarcation line between these 2 halves of the city. So, Alternative 1 improves overall population balance, which is, of course, our first criteria, and also seeks improved spatial compactness and contiguity, which is our second criteria. Here we see a map that outlines all of the various changes that have to occur from your existing district map to make the map that you would have under Alternative 1. So in this case, all those areas of change are indicated with the red hatching. Now, in a moment, I'm going to, very carefully go through each one of these changes and describe them. But many of these changes will be repeated in the future maps, and so for brevity's sake, when we have a change that's repeated, I won't belabor the point and go over that geographic description again. Here we see what your district boundaries would look like were you to adopt Alternative 1 as your new district boundaries. So, beginning in the south of the city, in District 1, the western portion of Nautica Isles, as was mentioned before, is non-contiguous with District 5. So this is the contiguity problem that we're particularly trying to address here, rather than the sense that the existing districts split a neighborhood. Even though that's not ideal, again, it's the contiguity issue that we're trying to solve here. So we resolve that by moving the 1,151 residents that are found in this area from District 5 into District 1. Specifically, is that portion of the neighborhood found to the west of the E3 canal. This change is included in all of the 5 alternatives that we present this evening. The next change that we make, District 5 acquires 1,416 people from District 2 in this change. Specifically, we're talking about that part of the city found between the L11 Canal and Lake Worth Road in the north-south direction, and Sherwood Forest Boulevard and Jog Road in the east-west direction, together with that part of the city south of the L11 Canal and west of Jog Road. This change is also included in alternatives 2 and 3. We then move to the northern part of the city. Presently, if you look on the right-hand side of the map, on the east side of the map, you see a little green appendage sticking out there to the east of Jog Road. This is the non-contiguous portion that we are trying to resolve here, and we do that by moving into District 4 the portion of the city that is north of the L7 Canal and east of Jog Road. The portion of the city that's north of the L7 Canal and east of Jog Road is the non-contiguous portion, and so to address this, we're moving 4,192 people from District 3 to District 4, specifically that portion of the city found to the north of Forest Hill Boulevard and west of Jog Road, together with the River Bridge Shopping Center. This change is also included in Alternative 5. So we finish out by moving to the middle of the city, specifically along 10th Avenue North. So again, our goal is to try to use that major thoroughfare as the north-south demarcation line between your districts. So District 3 acquires 261 people from District 2, specifically that part of the city that's found between the L10 Canal and 10th Avenue North in the north-south direction and found to the west of Jog Road. Again, this is also included in Alternative 5. District 3 also acquires 3,449 people from District 4, specifically that part of the city found between the E3 Canal and Jog Road in the east-west direction and between 10th Avenue North and Cresthaven Boulevard in the north-south direction. Again, this is included in Alternative 5. And then District 3 is completed by acquiring 654 people from District 1, specifically that part of the city found to the east of the E3 Canal and north of 10th Avenue North, and this is also included in Alternative 5. We then move to District 2. This is the last change that we have to talk about. You'll forgive me. District 2 acquires 3,640 people from District 1. And we're going to describe this area in three parts, moving from north to south. So it's that part of the city that's found between the L11 Canal and 10th Avenue North in the north-south direction, and east of South 57th Avenue, together with that part of the city that's found between the L11 Canal and 2nd Street in the north-south direction, and east of the E3 Canal, together with that part of the city found between 2nd Street and 1st Street in the north-south direction, and the E3 Canal and Swain Boulevard in the east-west direction. This change is essential to all the alternatives and is therefore included in all of the alternatives. So, what is the result of all these changes? The overall deviation is much improved under Alternative 1. The total deviation falls from 66.22% to just 0.93%, while the mean deviation falls all the way down to 0.19%. It's worth noting that both deviations are tied for the lowest of all the alternatives that we present this evening. The spread is also much improved. It falls from 56.85% down to 1.26%. Good.
Before we move on to, I want to open it up to the councils to see if they have any questions.
Certainly.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Are there any questions from the council regarding Alternative 1? Councilmember Duda.
So from what I understood, and it's very hard because I can't read streets, but you've taken River Bridge Plaza, which was District 3, a commercial property, and changed that to 2? What other part of River Bridge?
Is this the area you're referring to? River Bridge Shopping Center?
Yes,
Just the shopping center.
just the shopping center.
So it's south of Forest Hill Boulevard, we moved that shopping center. And the reason we do that, of course, is to maintain contiguity between the district.
Okay, I won't argue with you, but contiguity, to me, it would have been leaving it as part of River Bridge.
So
District
the
3.
issue, of course, is that we're talking about District 4, which is the green area on the map.
Yeah.
And so if you don't move the shopping plaza into District 4, then the only way that the area south of Forest Hill Boulevard would be part of District 4, would be connected to the rest of District 4, would be at this cata-corner approach at the intersection of Forest Hill and Jog Road. That doesn't work as contiguity.
Any other questions from the council? All right. Moving on to Alternative 2.
Okay, Alternative 2.
So, in Alternative 2, the southern half of the city is identical to that of Alternative 1. So what we're doing here is presenting another solution to the contiguity issue north of the L7 Canal and east of Jog Road. In this case, the area is given to District 3. This is going to necessitate a contraction of District 3 to the south. Again, this improves overall population balance, spatial compactness, and contiguity. Again, here we see a map of all the changes that are occurring under Alternative 2 from the existing districts. But of course, we've already discussed everything that's going on south of 10th Avenue, so we'll just concentrate on what's going on in the northern part of this city over these next few slides. Here you see a map of what your council districts would look like were you to adopt Alternative 2 as your new district boundaries. So, to address a problem that was brought out previously, obviously the council members' homes have changed. Some of the council members' homes have changed since we started this process, and so this may be problematic. However, this is the area that is discontinuous from the rest of the district under the existing boundaries, and so in this particular alternative, it's the other choice, right? We move this area from District 4 to District 3. Specifically, this involves a shift of 1,683 residents from District 4 to District 3. Specifically, the area we're discussing is that part of the city that's north of the L7 Canal, south of Summit Boulevard, west of Ranchette Road, and east of Jog Road. This alternative is included in both, this change is included in both alternatives 3 and 4. Now, to offset that previous gain, District 3 must give up territory to its south. So under this alternative, we do that by moving the boundaries of District 3 up. So specifically, we're moving that part of District 3 presently found to the north of the L10 Canal, west of Jog Road, south and west of a line that is the easterly extension of Freedom Park's southern boundary, then continuing south along Eagle Ridge Drive and east along River Bridge Boulevard. This area is home to 1,613 residents. Here we see another shift. This is the same boundary we saw before, but this time we're talking about different districts. So in this case, District 4 acquires 261 people from District 2. Again, this change is also included in alternatives 3 and 4. And again, here we see District 4 acquiring 654 people from District 1. And again, this is the same area that was acquired by District 3 in Alternative 1. So I won't go through the exact descriptions of the geography again. Again, this change is included in Alternative 3 and 4. So under Alternative 2, the overall deviation is much improved. The total deviation falls down to 2.32%, while the mean deviation falls to 0.46%. Again, these are both excellent numbers, but it's worth noting that of all 5 alternatives we present, they are the highest of those alternatives. The spread falls to 2.32%, again an excellent number, but again the highest of all the 5 alternatives we present this evening.
So, I think this is a great time to tackle the issue that's at hand. The issue that's at hand is that currently the person that sits in District 4 lives in that little carved out area. And so what is the solution to that?
The solution to that would be that the council would reject that option.
So rejecting alternative 2?
That's your option. I mean, or you adopt it, and then you'd have to refer to your attorney as to what would happen to the council member living in that area.
What would happen if we went down alternative 2, 3, 4, where and Susie, I'm going to, Councilmember Diaz, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I apologize, but it's just easier to talk about it this way. Councilmember Diaz lives in the northern, eastern part of Jog Road in that community, where in alternative 2, 3, and 4, that would present an issue. Because now, in those 3 scenarios, that becomes District 3.
District 3.
So what would happen in that case? I'm just trying to explore all the options here, put them out, and lay them out, the cards on the table.
Ideally, you select a different alternative, and you don't have to cross that bridge because it becomes difficult. She's just been elected from that district for a term. Generally speaking, without doing the research on it, she'd get to serve out her term and then would have to move if she wanted to continue to represent District 4 after her term is over. You don't usually take someone out of a seat they've just been elected to. She would continue to serve for the remainder of this term. But then with this term, I'm going to research that, but that's my memory of what happens when someone's district changes in the middle of their term of office.
Okay. All right, now that we got that out there, I just wanted to.
More alternatives, please.
Certainly, while we would never dream of eliminating alternatives, we find it helpful in all of the other district-making processes that we've been through for the cities to, at the beginning of the process, if they eliminate some options, it can help the decision-making process. So, Alternative 3 builds off of Alternative 2. It seeks improved compactness and population balance for Districts 3 and 4. And again, it offers another approach to dealing with this northern portion of the city. Again, it improves overall population balance, spatial compactness, and contiguity. Again, here we see all the changes that would need to be made from the existing districts to achieve the boundaries under Alternative 3. But of course, I'm not going to go through each one of those. I'll only go through those that are unique to this particular alternative. This is what your boundaries would look like if you were to adopt Alternative 3. So, again, only concentrating on those changes that are unique to this alternative. District 3 migrates again east of Jog Road, thus District 3 forms the entire northern portion of the city. Under this particular change, it absorbs 1,783 people from District 4, and specifically that's the portion of the city that is found north of the L9 Canal, south of Forest Hill Boulevard, and east of Jog Road. This change is also included in Alternative 4. In turn, District 4 migrates north and west, specifically that part of District 3 presently found to the west of Jog Road, north of the L10 Canal, south of the Harbour Point and crosswinds at River Bridge communities, and south of Harbour Lakes Circle and Harbour Lakes Road, together with Freedom Park. This area is home to 3,313 residents. So again, as a tweak of Alternative 2, let's compare those two numbers, the numbers of Alternative 2 and Alternative 3. The total deviation falls from 2.32% to 0.93%, while the mean deviation falls from 0.46% down to 0.19%. So both of these deviations are tied for lowest amongst all the 5 alternatives presented this evening. And the spread falls from 2.32% down to 1.4%.
Quick question from the council. I just want to get a consensus because I got a feeling that 3 and 4 are kind of the same thing. Can I get the consensus that nobody's interested in splitting up River Bridge?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we can move on to...
Move right along. Hang on. Can I make a motion that we eliminate 2, 3, and 4 and discuss the differences between 1 and 5? Anybody?
Can we make that motion?
Sure. Sure, if that's motion and second, if that's the consensus of the council, you can...
I'll second
it.
Can you make the formal motion?
I'd like to make a motion to eliminate alternatives 2, 3, and 4 and discuss the differences between 1 and 5.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Bousquet to eliminate option 2, 3, or alternative 2, 3, 4. Second by Deputy Mayor Tharp.
You going to discuss the motion?
I usually do that. Comments or questions? Councilmember Noble.
I don't think we should do it that way. We should listen to the entire presentation first and get the overall picture before we just take a shortcut here. So I'm against the motion.
All read it.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Opposed?
All right, that motion passes 4-1, so let's move on over to alternative 5.
Unfortunately, with the way we've constructed our presentation, we're going to have to talk a little bit about some of the slides that are embedded under the discussion of Alternative 4, but I will move straight forward to Alternative 5 as soon as I possibly can.
Thank you.
The commonality between Alternative 4 and Alternative 5 is that they leave the northern half of the city, Alternative 4 leaves the northern half of the city the same as it does in Alternative 3, but in Alternative 4 and 5 we look at an alternative approach for the southern portion of the city. So allow me to discuss those geographic changes for the southern portion, and then we'll move on to Alternative 5. Thank you very much. So again, here we see the changes, but the particular change you want to pay attention to is the one we're about to take a look at. It's the northern area of District 5 that you see there in that map. This is the boundary change that we're going to discuss on the next slide. So here in Alternative 4, but also in Alternative 5, District 5 acquires 1,477 people from District 2 under both of these alternatives. Specifically, we're talking about that area that's south of the Pine Ridge 4 subdivision, north of Lake Worth Road, east of Sherwood Forest Boulevard, and west of the E3 Canal. Again, this is included in Alternative 5. So I'm not even going to talk about this slide, but just move right on to Alternative 5. Alternative 5 is a combination of Alternatives 1 and 4. That is, it's the northern half of Alternative 1, but the southern half of Alternative 4. Again, it creates improved population balance, spatial compactness, and contiguity. So, here are all the boundary changes that are necessary under Alternative 5. Fortunately, we've discussed each of those geographic changes, so I don't need to go into that point anymore. And we can just move straight on to the statistics that are associated with this particular alternative. But allow me to pause and point out that this is what your boundaries would look like were you to adopt Alternative 5. So, the overall deviation is much improved under Alternative 5. The total deviation falls from 66.22% down to 1.6%, while the mean deviation falls all the way down to 0.32%. The spread falls from 56.85% under the existing districts all the way down to 1.17%, which is the lowest spread of the 5 alternatives presented this evening. Now, there is one caveat here as we discuss alternatives 4 and 5, or in your case, alternative 5, since you seem to have already eliminated alternative 4, which is great. And that is your pending JOG and Lake Worth ISBA. If that interlocal service boundary agreement goes forth and you do annex this area, ideally you would have a situation where to the north of Lake Worth Road, everything would be District 2, and to the south of Lake Worth Road, everything would be District 5. However, presently, because that annexation has not occurred, the Crossroads Plaza at the southeast corner of Lake Worth Road and Jog Road has to be drawn as part of District 2 under Alternative 4 and Alternative 5 as your current city boundaries stand. Of course, this area is home to 0 residents, which is important because what we would suggest is that if you adopt Alternative 5, we would recommend that at the adoption of the ISBA, if that happens, that you would go back and amend the boundaries such that everything south of Lake Worth Road, again, becomes District 5, and everything north becomes District 2. This is kind of a unique situation. We haven't run into this particular problem before, so we just wanted to make a note of it. So, to summarize, all of the alternatives dramatically improve population balance among the 5 districts and resolve the contiguity issues that we mentioned. All are well below the 10% deviation threshold. Empirically, the numbers are fantastic. No one alternative is drastically better than another, empirically speaking. So when it comes to choosing your alternative, it's really a question of which one you find best serves the needs of your residents. I've highlighted on here the alternatives with the best mean deviation. Those are alternatives 1 and 3, but you've already rejected number 3. And of course, alternative 5 has the best spread, but again, these are excellent numbers. So it's really a question of whatever you find to be preferential. And with that, we conclude our presentation. We'd be very happy to answer any questions you might have.
First of all, that was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
For being so thorough and explaining each. Thank you for explaining each area and the impact that each one played. I think that was fantastic. I've heard nothing but great reviews from our staff, so thank you for all the work that you have done. I do have a question, and then I'll open it up to the council. When we're talking about future annexation, right? Because we're talking about 10 years of what could happen. When we make this decision, do we also create boundaries of what if? If this happens, like you just mentioned, something north of Lake Worth would go to one district, something south. So as we're talking about this, would that also happen?
Not normally. That particular case we brought up, we mentioned because you have an in-process annexation. So as part of our review, not only did we consider your ongoing developments, but we also looked at the annexations. In most of those cases, it didn't become an if-then scenario. If you chose option 1, it would do this. If you chose option 2, it would do this. In that particular case, you're right on the border. So that's an issue. But otherwise, no, it's not an issue. That said, quantitatively speaking, after you choose one of these options, any one of these options, you're going to have plenty margin for error. So I would anticipate that, no matter what growth you have, unless it becomes really something booming, or what annexation you have, you're going to have some margin to error to play with before your next decennial census.
Thank you so much. All right, I'll open it up to the council for comments or questions. Councilmember Dugo.
Okay, so, I know I'm being tough on this.
No, that's okay.
So this little area
Fancy.
is the commercial area
Yes.
of Riverbridge.
Correct.
Okay, it's unpopulated because it's mostly commercial.
Correct.
So my mind is saying, why take that commercial area and tell me it's because of, well, population numbers,
Continuity.
thank you, when that's commercial?
It's so that, I believe it's so that they touch, because without that piece of property, they won't touch. Am I,
Well,
Correct.
it's
I'm trying to pull up the
Forest-
map here. Now.
But Forest Hill Boulevard runs right through that, and I'm wondering why, where Forest Hill Boulevard is, that everything, yeah, if you could pull
Does it
it.
have a laser pointer? Doesn't look like it. I'll use the mouse. Can you see the cursor, my cursor on the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
That-
So what we're effectively doing here is using the shopping plaza as a bridge between this area that's east of Jog Road
Right.
and this area that's west of Jog Road. Without the shopping plaza as a bridge, the only contiguity is a point-to-point catacorner across the cross-section. If this was an annexation, I could tell you that the county would object to such an annexation because that would not be considered contiguous. And so that's why we move this shopping plaza into District 4 is for that contiguity reason, for that land bridge. Again, it doesn't affect the numbers at all because, as you rightly point out, there's zero population. So it's purely for contiguity reasons.
Okay, listen, I'm looking at 5, and that's my only objection.
Councilmember Noble.
Going up north, we're on the verge on Summit of possibly annexing Jog Park, or whatever it's called there.
Okay?
Once that's done, that opens, that's contiguous to all the land north, which is the ideal land for developers. They like those big lots, puts in lots of houses. Now, have you taken into consideration what's going to happen if that property is annexed into the city? The annexations will run rampant north.
So we can only consider those annexations that are in process. If you do have an annexation that occurs and then subsequently a great deal of development and that throws your districts out of alignment, I would certainly suggest that you invite us back to do this process again, and we can look at population equity. You don't necessarily have to wait for the next decennial census, but we can't factor in something that may or may not happen.
City Manager McKim.
Mayor, if I may, Councilmember Noble, you're referring to Pine Jog Environmental Education Center?
Yes.
And the property there, it is a massive parcel that goes almost all the way up to Gun Club. That is actually protected land that is part of a trust. It is not something, I don't believe, that has the ability to be developed into housing or anything else.
No, it doesn't. You're right.
That's correct. I mean,
I'm saying that becomes the city. Therefore, that allows developers to use the northern part of that as contiguous land to keep developing.
there is the possibility that the northernmost point from there,
It definitely will occur.
well, I do know there's also the canal as well that separates, that's where Pine Jog ends at the canal there. So we would need to look into, what issues or concerns there are related to the canal as far as, but yes, there could be annexations that happen after that, there could be, but they would have to be done by a ballot question because they're residential annexations. So it would need to be something that would have to go on a ballot.
It's a procedure, and I'm
Correct.
sure it's an involved procedure. But I can tell you what I've seen over the years is that the developers just love that area up north, and they love those lots. They're very large, and one way or the other, the city will run right up Jog Road, maybe even to the Turnpike.
You mean to
Because
southern?
as you annex new land, you now become contiguous to the other land, which now becomes potentially developable.
But you mean west or north?
I'm talking about going north of Jog, everything developing north of Jog,
So just southern?
all the way up to, beyond, yes, all the way to southern, potentially. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to happen right away. That goes, piece by piece is what it usually develops, happens. And then, of course, it makes it contiguous to the other side of Jog, so then, both sides of Jog can be developed. So that opens up a tremendous real estate boon for the city once we annex that property into the city. Now, is that good or bad? I'll leave the question mark.
I mean, I think we have a say whether we want to annex or not, so I think it's a process, so thank you for that feedback. Any other council members? Feedback? Councilmember Bousquet?
I just think, obviously, we need to deal with what is now. We can't tell the future, and we can always make adjustments. So I think that we ought to vote on 1 or 5, or I would like more information on comparisons of 1 and 5, if you will.
Certainly. So again, when it comes to 1 and 5, the northern part of the city is identical. So really we're only looking at the difference between District 2 and District 5 under those two boundaries. So under Alternative 2, let me pull that up, under Alternative 1, you see that District 5 runs up the western part of the city, whereas under Alternative 5, it expands into the central part of District 2. Let me pull that up for you right here. So it's a very subtle shift. And in terms of the numbers, you'll see here that they're both very similar. But, let me see, sorry, wrong slide. Empirically speaking, Alternative 5 could be argued to have a better spread, whereas Alternative 1 has a better mean deviation. It's bigger. It doesn't matter.
Thank you, and thank you for repeating that. I know you said it before. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Bousquet, I think it comes down whether you want half of the original section. Or you want the western part of that. So I think it's a toss-up in District 5. You either take the eastern side or you take the western side.
Am I the only person that's affected? Or my district is...
Well, between 1, well, technically it's 5 and 2. The other ones, I believe, stay the same. So
Right. I really don't have a preference. I'm just happy this is being done.
I will defer to our city manager and staff. I don't know what you guys have compiled, what your recommendation might be.
From my perspective, when we first received the maps, my only concern, again, was with districts, or with options 2, 3, and 4. I know we had the issue with Nautica Isles and trying to keep HOAs or communities intact, so my concern with 2, 3, and 4 was regarding Riverbridge. We had spoken about that. We talked about that concern. From the very beginning, 1 and 5 were the options to me that seemed like the most viable options. I understood, I had some question regarding the plaza at Riverbridge, what the reasoning was behind that, trying to understand that in the grand scheme of everything. But essentially, I think impacted in 1 and 5 are really districts 2 and 5, and I think it's really a matter of, whether or not District 2 has more of the west and District 5 has more of the east, or the reverse, District 5 has more of the west and, District 2 has more of the east. I think that really was the only thing that I saw that would really be the point which I think would need to be discussed and a determination made between 1 and 5. Outside of that, those were the two that I preferred from the very beginning.
So, excuse me, option 1 takes District 5 west?
Correct. It takes District 5 more west, and option 2 takes District 5 more central and east.
Okay, so if you're asking my preference, yeah, I'm looking at it, but thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Alternative 1.
So, I mean, if I had a preference, I would say alternative 1, but if District 2, which I guess is Mr. Noble, has a different opinion, I would consider that, I think.
I would take number 5.
Oh, you would like number 5, okay. Which leaves,
Deputy Mayor Tharp.
So I'm looking at it without trying to look at the maps too much, and personally, I think alternative 1 gives us, we have such a small deviation that if we have any sort of exponential growth, it seems to be the most compact from that aspect. So I think I'd vote alternative 1 at this point.
I have a question for the gentleman.
Councilmember Noble.
What consideration do we take for trailer parks, which may be temporary housing? I mean, which may shift the volume of population. Do you take that into consideration?
Again, any development that's...
Large trailer parks.
Yeah, any development that's under process, we would consider. We can't speculate as to future development of trailer parks. But that said, as we mentioned before, the deviation of these alternatives is so good that you're going to have some margin for error. And should you find that you have a major development, not to sound self-serving, but I would suggest to invite us back and analyze it again. I would also note that, one of the advantages of Alternative 1 over Alternative 5 is that you won't have to deal with the ISBA problem.
Won't have to deal with what? Okay.
The interlocal service boundary agreement, the annexation that's pending, you won't have to worry about whether it's in District 5 or District 2. It'll just be in District 5.
You can't distinguish, and I'll go to you, Councilmember
No, I'm beating.
Dugo, but you can't really distinguish between if it's a trailer park or
Correct. We just count the residents of the city, whether they're, 6 months old or 106 years old. It's our job to make sure that every resident has equal representation at the
That's the
council.
key word.
All residents should be equal.
Councilmember Dugo.
I'm beating the horse to death here. I'd like to have my district, my commercial part of my district, River Bridge Plaza. 1 and 5 are both agreeable to me, except that little portion of River Bridge Plaza.
Right. Well, as a council, of course, you all can do whatever you want. I can't stop you from doing what you want. As your consultant, that's not a move that I could support for the contiguity reason.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept alternative 1.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion made by Councilmember Bousquet, second by Deputy Mayor Tharp. Are there any comments or questions at this
I'd like to
time?
make an alternative motion that we accept District number 5.
Okay, I have an alternative motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
For existing 5, for number 5,
For number 5.
yes.
All right, so I have a motion, an alternative motion. Remind me of the process here, Glenn. Do I entertain the second one now?
Correct. Now that you have alternative motion, that motion gets voted on first.
So the second motion goes first, correct?
Yes.
All right, so I have an alternative motion by Councilmember Noble, second by Councilmember Dugo. At this point in time, all in favor?
Aye.
I have 2, all those opposed?
Opposed?
Aye.
So that does not pass, 2-3. So we have the original motion on the floor for alternative 1. All those in favor, so once again, that motion was made by Councilmember Bousquet, second by Deputy Mayor Tharp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, and all those opposed?
Opposed?
Just Councilmember?
I'm sorry, I voted yes.
Yes, okay, so that motion carries 4-1 for alternative 1. Are there any other comments or questions?
Mayor, the only thing that I would have to add is that the first reading for this item with the ordinance would be April the 18th.
April the 18th.
That'll be the first reading, correct.
So based on alternative one, the corner plaza that was in question in Lake Worth and Jog, that would be, which one are you recommending?
It becomes District 5, right?
Oh, no, so the ISBA under district, will just be District 5.
District 5?
Recommendation doesn't come into it. It'll be completely surrounded by District 5 if and when it's annexed, and so it'll become District 5.
Excellent. Any other questions? So on behalf of the City of Green Acres and the council, we want to thank you for everything that you guys have done with us. I understand that we used FAU last time, so it seems like it's a great partnership. If for some reason we annex rapidly over the next 10 years,
I might get my plaza back.
That's right.
we will be happy to invite you guys back. So once again, thank you for
Thank you very much. It was a
everything
great
you've done.
honor. Thank you.
Anything from the city?
Thank you very much for the time. We really appreciate all of the work that you guys did on our behalf and all of the meetings that we had early on just to understand the process, gather all the information. So we're very grateful for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you, too. You really made everything quite clear. Thank you. Could you pass this down to the mayor? Thank you, Joel.
All right. Just want to go back to what I mentioned earlier about regarding how we do the process, whether it's an ordinance or resolution or charter, but just so that we have a process that this could get revisited and not go 20 years and then have the numbers be skewed. And I'm assuming it just happened because of annexation.
Yeah, and I think that the most appropriate way to do that would probably be part of just the approval of the ordinance. During that discussion, the direction is given, okay, going forward, this is whether the council decides that we're going to reconvene the Charter Review Committee at some point to take a look at, does anything here related to this new map that is going to be representative of the districts of the city, does it have any impact on any of the current charter language? Should that be revisited? Should it be looked at? Or is it just appropriate, as our city attorney had said, that doing an ordinance just to be able to say that the city is going to every 10 years as part of the census look at this as well?
And one thing that we should add in there is language for any unforeseen circumstances. What we saw with COVID, it made the county, when they were going through theirs, because they put a time frame by the time that it had to be redone, the redistricting, they were running up against it. So maybe when we add language, if something happens, that we have a little bit of an extended period.
Okay. Well, the nice thing for us, because there are some municipalities that have a time frame that it has to be done by such and such time frame, we don't currently have anything in place as far as that's concerned. So there is really no time frame for us to do that. If we don't state a specific time frame, we probably still would have that flexibility, but stating a time frame would then cause us to look at how we would handle something like that.
Excellent. All right. There are no discussion item tonight. At this time, are there comments from the public on non-agenda items? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Leonard Grant, 152 Two Pine Drive. I just wanted to say that last meeting that I brought up about the signs for kids playing, and I just want to thank the city manager for getting on top of that and starting to work that process through. So I just want to say thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak, please come forward. All right. Seeing no one, do we have a city manager's report tonight?
No report from me, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Glenn, do we have a city attorney's report?
No report.
We have, moving on to the mayor and city council's report. I think I started to my right last time, so I'm going to start to my left. Councilmember Busquet.
Nothing, thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Diaz.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilmember Dugo.
Nothing.
Councilmember Noble.
Nothing.
Deputy Mayor Tharp.
No report.
And there's no report from the mayor. All right. I believe we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.
Get home in time for the second period.
I asked you
Yeah, they lost. I was so
I know.
lost to Maple Leaf.
I know. They got Montreal tonight, so they should spank them.
Hopefully so.
I hope so.
Let's hope so.
Now they got through, I can
I think they might need a little time to just kind of mesh.
Yeah, no, they changed up some lines and,
Yeah.
but Drew has face all king.
I agree.
And-
I agree.